นับเป็นอะไรเนาะธรรมนาสกาวาลีดูอัตรากิสันดูเทวดารัตนังมุนีราซาดาตุนันดูตะกามอกขาดันธรรมตาวนาคาโลอิยัมปัตตันดาธรรมตาวนาคาโลอิยัมปัตตันดาธรรมตาวนาคาโลอิยัมปัตตันดาว้าวน่าสนเนาะရှင်ဘုရားတပည့်တော်တို့သည်သာသနာတော်အားချီးမြှောက်ထောက်ပံ့တော်အားဖြင့်နိဗ္ဗာန်ကိုရည်မှန်း၍သံဃာကိုရည်မှန်း၍လွန်ခဲ့သောသုံးဘက်ခန္ဓာကွယ်လွန်သွားသောရောတင်တင်မှုအားရည်စူး၍ဥသိမ်းနိုင်တော်ခြင်းဤဒီသာတစုတို့နှင့်ပတ်သက်သမျှတို့နှင့်တကွသဘာဝတရားရိပ်တာအတွက်နဝကမ္မဒေါ်လာတစ်ထောင်ကိုစက္ကန့်လူတန်းပါ၏ဤကောင်းမှုကံစေတနာတို့ကြောင့်လုံးစုံသောဒီယောဂများဝေလွတ်မြောက်ပြီးလျှင်လောကီလောကုတ္တရာမင်္ဂလာဖြာဖြာတို့သည်စိတ်ကြံတိုင်းတောင်းတာတိုင်းလွယ်ကူနေမြန်စွာပြီးပြည့်စုံ၍နှလုံးစိတ်ဝမ်းဒီချမ်းရပါလို့ဤဤကောင်းမှုကုသိုလ်ကိုဥသိမ်းနိုင်တော်ခြင်းဤမိသားတစုတို့နှင့်ပတ်သက်သမျှတို့နှင့်တကွာသာသနာတော်ဆောင်နှင့်လူဆောင်နှင့်ရပ်ကွယ်ဆောင်နှင့်အိမ်ဆောင်နှင့်ရိပ်သာဆောင်နှင့်တိပင်ဆောင်နှင့်ယုတ်ကဇုနှင့်ပူဆောင်နှင့်တို့နှင့်30ပုံသာအားလုံးတို့အားအမြပေးဝေပါ၏ကျွန်ုပ်တို့နှင့်ထပ်တူထမြရရှိ၍ဝမ်းမြောက်ဝမ်းသာသာဓုခေါ်ဆိုနိုင်ကြပါစေကုသိုလ်မြတ်ယူတော်မူကြပါကုန်လောသာဓုကုသိုလ်မြတ်ယူတော်မူကြပါကုန်လောသာဓုကုသိုလ်မြတ်ယူတော်မူကြပါကုန်လောသာဓုအမြညာကြ၍စိတ်ချမ်းသာခြင်းကိုယ်ဤကျမ်းမာခြင်းနှင့်ပြည့်စုံကြပြီးကောင်းကျိုးလူရာဆန္ဒများအမြဲပြည့်ဝနိုင်ကြပါစေတရားရောတစ်ပြည့်
တရားထိုင်တဲ့ခါထိုင်ပါတဲ့အချိန်ပြမှတ်တာတော့နည်းနည်းပုံပြီးတော့ဆင်ပြပါလောက်ရလုံနေတော့
လုံရင်းနဲ့
လုံရင်းနဲ့
ဆရာတော်ရဲ့တရားခွေလေးကိုရှိတော့နာကြည့်ဒီဆရာတော်နာဘူးလား
မနာဘူးပါ
နာဘူးနော်အိမ်မှာစီးစိတ်ပါရှိဒီစီးစိတ်ပါ
ရှိတာနော်မရှိတော့ဘူးတို့လုံး
တရားတော်လည်းတော့
online နဲ့နာ
ဟောဖြစ်ရင်တော့ဦးစင်းတို့ဒီလိုဆက်တီးလေးပေါ့အဲ့မူလေးတော့ရှိတယ်ဦးစင်းတို့နာကြည့်နေလေဦးစင်းတို့စုံအချစ်လေးထည့်တယ်လေဟုတ်ဒါလေးကတော့ဒီလိုပဲပေါ့ဟိုအိမ်မှာနေနဲ့ဖွင့်ထားပြီးဆရာတော်ကနင်းအောင်အဲ့လို skip ရှိဆက်ကတော့ရှိဆက်ရရှိ
ရောက်ပြီးတော့ဒီကြောင်ကြားရောက်တယ်ဟောဒီပစ္စည်းကဒီဖြစ်ဒီမှာလာချတာ
ဟုတ်ပြီ
ဒီနေ့တော့ဘယ်နေရာတည်ကိုကျောင်းမှာကြောင်းဒီနေ့
တပတ်လုံးကြွားတယ်။ကျတော့အမှမတင်နိုင်ဘူးပေါ့။အဲ့ဒီမှာကျတော့မြန်မာတွေတချို့ကအဲ့မှာလာဆောင်တောင်းလာတယ်။နောက်အင်ဒိုနီးရှားအဖွဲ့လာတော့စနေနေ့ဆိုတင်နေတာ။တင်လာနေ့ဆိုတင်နေတာပေါ့။မြန်မာအများစုရှိတယ်။
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We'll just be taking, about 10 minutes as people join in. And for everyone who's here, we can begin to get settled into our bodies, into our intention to practice together as a community. And also, if there's any questions that you have before we start, you're welcome to ask while you're here, while we are waiting. Can leave on, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Good morning, Chesh. Welcome in. Oh, I'm feeling pretty well. I'm looking forward to the upcoming trip. It's pretty exciting, heading to England. Siale, can you close? So upcoming trip, travel is always pretty exciting and maybe a little bit difficult as well during COVID time. Maybe I should post some announcements about our event here, our morning practice together. And everyone who's watching, don't forget to like and share if you feel so inspired to do so. Looks like we got 7 people here right now. It's very nice when if you can say hello. Joni, hi there, Joni. We are coming together live to practice together. So when we can know that the other people are there joining us, that's a real treat. Can really inspire and even empower. Make an announcement or so here. Hope. Hi there, Sweet PS. Happy Easter. Easter meditation, Easter morning meditation. Who would have thought? But this is a good way to practice our Easter, to celebrate our Easter. Welcome, Oasis, and Ong Sidi Hitwe. Sounds like a Burmese name, so welcome. Mangalaba. We'll get started in a few more minutes, about 5 minutes. And today we'll be starting with a reading, and we'll get into our meditation together. Welcome, everyone. Lots of people joining. We are just getting started, so if you're here now, it's the perfect time to join. Easter morning group meditation plus some guidance. Maybe we can pose the question before we get started. How are people's meditation practice going? How is your meditation? How is it going? Or maybe you don't have a practice, but if you would like to answer that in the live chat, how is your meditation practice going? Hi there, Astral Lounge. Welcome. Oh, so we've got a few shares here. Sweet PS, their meditation is going better when guided, and so many thanks. Sometimes meditation is quite difficult. Sometimes it's quite easy, but both of those are informative. Both of those are the practice. So you don't need to think just the pleasant meditations are the ones that are working. If you're able to show up, if you're able to turn your attention inward and be with that, that's a successful meditation. A Jean from the garden, going to be meditating in the garden, wonderful. Stalin, or someone saying here, Glory saying here, feeling more relaxed these days, but still get distracted and anxious sometimes. When we begin to practice meditation, we kind of notice more and more about our mind. So we may find, oh, I'm more anxious. I am more anxious, I'm more distracted. But it may not be that we are more distracted or more anxious, but rather that we are more aware of it. And when we are aware of something, that's kind of, we're getting ahead, we're getting out ahead of it, and we can begin to work with it and heal that situation. So it can be good when we are aware that we're anxious, we are aware that we're distracted. Oh, Oasis DNA sharing something here. Meditation with my children is going very well. Question, do you personally use singing bowls? We have 2 now, and I'm curious exactly when and how to incorporate them. One is large and with a mallet. Well, the bowls, the sound, can be very empowering in our meditation to inviting us, bringing us home to the body, bringing us into the present. So the bells can be very helpful for that. And whatever it is, maybe it's a stretching, maybe it's a shaking around, jumping up and down, whatever is going to bring your mind back and gear you, shift you into that present moment awareness. That's a helpful meditation tool. One of the biggest barriers that people run into is that there's this feeling of dullness when we just turn into the fact that being a human being and having a body, breathing and having a body, it can be this resistance, this dullness. Well, that's not exciting. That's not interesting. And so that perpetuates this mental chatter constantly, constant mental chatter, constant thinking. And then at that moment when the conditions are ripe, and we can, hopefully some of us are going to have those conditions this morning. When those conditions are ripe, then we can tune into breathing and having a body and just being with that, being okay with that. But one of the biggest barriers is that we're not accustomed to being okay with that. We're not accustomed to settling, the value of settling down. And anyone who's practiced meditation can probably tell you that the value is there. But we have to first, that shift, that change of stance to begin the practice, getting into the practice. And then certainly that value is going to appear to you quite quickly, even if it's not stimulating. Chesh, we're just sharing a bit about how our practices have been going, all the myriad people who are here. Chess practice has been going well. Atlas has been busy, hasn't practiced as much, but time to get back on the wagon. That's right. Good morning to Jen, Olivier, Oasis. So let's go ahead and get started. For the people that are here, we're very fortunate, we're very lucky to be taking a look at this reading from Chan Master Sheng Yen, mystical master Sheng Yen. So Zen Buddhism, Buddhism in general, meditation in general. What's the Buddhist perspective? What's the high-level perspective? What are the high-level Buddhist masters, Buddhist meditation teachers, specifically Zen or Chan? What are they going to instruct? What's their teaching when it talks to the mind and healing ourselves and developing ourselves through meditation? So we'll take a look at this short bit of reading, and then we'll go into the practice together. We will practice together. And good morning to Zamachia. So oftentimes, as a preface to this reading, oftentimes we have a scattered mind. Our mind is always scattered. It's either scattered in a pleasurable way, we're running around chasing after pleasure, or we're running around chasing feeling pleasure, or distress. And the quality of this is that it's a scattered mind. It's a jumbled, jibby-jobby, jumping around mind. And it doesn't matter if it's about cars or money or a job or power, or if it's about chakras and crystals and different planes of existence and different levels of meditation. A scattered mind is a scattered mind. That's it. So a basic premise approach from a Chan perspective, from a Buddhist perspective, is that we're moving from a scattered mind to a simple mind. And welcome into Luke. So let's start with this, this reading here. The basic attitude for settling the mind. From the Chan perspective, which is Zen Buddhism, settling the mind is the method and process by which we cure the afflicted mind. So we have a suffering mind, we have a confusion mind, we have a distressed mind, anxious mind. It's a mess. From the Zen Buddhist perspective, settling the mind, Buddhist perspective, settling the mind is the method and process by which we cure the afflicted mind. Actually, the reason for people's mental instability already exists at the time of birth. If you do not recognize your problems by the time you have grown up, you really have problems. So at that very moment of birth, we're already in trouble. We've already gotten ourselves in over our heads to a certain extent. We have pain, pleasure. Babies are crying all the time. They're already in it. The moment that they're born, the moment that birth takes place, people's mental instability already is existing. So, if you do not recognize your problems by the time you have grown up, you really have problems. So, in a spiritual perspective, it's not just that we're chasing pleasure. We don't want to get into spiritual materialism, okay? So someone who has a lot of pleasure because they have a lot of money and power and fast cars and a nice place to live, etc., we would say they're materialistic, and some people may suffer too little. So they have a pleasurable life, it appears happy, but there's also a quality of suffering to their life. And also, even though they're having a lot of pleasure, they may be depressed, they may be causing suffering in the lives of other people, they may not have much insight into the nature of reality and the nature of their relationships, even though they have all this power and money. The same can be for spirituality. Just because you have a special experience, just because you have a pleasurable states of mind, that doesn't mean that you're free. It doesn't mean that you have insight. So nobody in the world is completely free from mental problems. And if you do not recognize your problems, if you don't recognize that first noble truth, there is suffering, there is difficulty, then you're really going to have problems. Since you came here to this practice, this signifies that you and others, and myself, could use help in some areas. So from that perspective, you are already a normal and healthy person. When you discover you have problems and illness and do not conceal them from yourself, this is a healthy attitude. So being aware, being mindful, I have this problem, I have this suffering, I have this difficulty, recognizing that. So how does Chan, or how does meditation, how does Buddhist meditation, in some sense here, how does Chan teach people to calm their minds in everyday life? How do we calm our minds in everyday life? The attitude is to recognize the problem, face it, deal with it, and then let it go. No matter what one encounters, do not see it as devastating. No matter how big our mistake, no matter how big our success or our failure, do not perceive it as all-encompassing. Recognize, become aware of it, face it, turn towards it, deal with it, embrace it, and then let it go. If one knows in advance what possible misfortune may occur, it is best not to let it happen. If it must happen, what is the use in worrying? Worries and anxieties not only are of no help, but will also probably make situations even worse. The best solution is to face it. So, an example is waking up. And this is very alive for me. When I wake up, I kind of feel tired. I feel, I'd like to stay in bed. It's cold. I don't have to, what do I really have to do? I should just stay in bed. But over time, when we deal with our suffering or we deal with our uncomfortableness in that way, that uncomfortableness grows. It weakens us. It doesn't empower us. So when waking up, I find that if I'm just willing to make that shift, if I'm just willing to light the candles, light the incense, make a shift, do a stretch, wash, rinse my face with some water, and then get into that meditation practice, which is facing our moment-to-moment reality. And we're very lucky that we're human beings, so we have a body. So we can use the body as this foundation, this anchor into the present moment reality. Our psychology, our emotions, our dreams, our past, future, etc., 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 as complex as you can imagine, it's all grounded in a moment-to-moment having a body, breathing. So when we practice meditation, turning our attention towards the breath, towards the awareness of the body, this is a very dynamic, integral practice of healing ourselves and facing ourselves. We don't need to face necessarily these big, complex ideas and stories about ourselves and our past and our future, because that's all going on, that's all it's all originating from the body, the moment-to-moment body. So we're very fortunate to be human beings and have a body when it comes to dealing with trauma, dealing with all these things. Very often, patients with cancer come to see me. This is Chan Master Sheng Yen. Very often, patients with cancer come to see me because the doctors have already told them that their life is about to come to an end. They come asking for help and to say goodbye as well. I tell them not to fear death, but not to wait for death either. If treatment is required, then accept treatment. If something can be done, then do it, and eat whatever you can eat. Live a normal life, but do not force yourself. Do not feel complete despair towards life. This is the Chan attitude. Living is very important and life is very precious. Do not be frightened by others and do not frighten yourself. Very often the situation may not be so bad, but people are scared or worried to death because they cannot accept what has happened and feel worried and anxious. Therefore, the approach of Chan, the approach of Zen, the meditator's approach to calming the mind is to do whatever should be done. We'll now go into a story from some old monks. One time, Master Monk saw another monk in the monastery and asked him, "You have been living here for a long time, right?" The other monk said, "No, I am new here." So the Master Monk told him, "Go and have some tea." He saw another monk later and asked him, "Have you been here a long time?" The monk replied, "Yes, I have." The Master Monk said to him, "Go and have some tea." The abbot, the head monk of the temple, witnessed this and was puzzled. So he asked the Master Monk, Why did the master invite the newcomer to tea and also the old-timer? So one's a new-timer, one's an old-timer, and yet he invited them both to tea. What's going on here? The master monk said to him, "You go have some tea too." This is the very famous tea koan or tea Zen story. What exactly happened in this story? Many people guess about its meaning, but it is actually quite simple. Because it was time for tea, the master invited everyone to go have some tea. In other words, life is living and doing whatever should be done. It is very important to experience and enjoy life and live earnestly. So, whether you're new here or you're old here, whether you're a jibby jobber or a krimka, whatever you are, let's practice meditation together. And I'll include myself in that as well. So we can start by just stretching our body a little bit, finding a comfortable position, the bones and the muscles and the lungs and the organs. We can just move those around and get settled into a comfortable position. Maybe we want to sit like I'm sitting, or sitting in a computer chair, sitting on the ground, whatever it might be. And don't worry about, we're not unlocking chakras in this meditation. We're not going to another planet. It's a moment-to-moment life. And meditation is all about stepping into this moment. Can you imagine throughout the entire universe, Abraham Lincoln, Genghis Khan, Mother Teresa, Jesus' mother, dinosaurs, throughout all this time, throughout the entire universe, we happen to be the current, present expressions of reality. So meditation is not this exercise of giving ourselves a shot of special experience, going to Pluto, but rather turning towards this uncomprehendable, intimate, beautiful, empowering, present experience. Being willing to be with that as it is, not running around all the time. So that's how we do our meditation practice. It's not dull, it's not special. It's not special, it's not dull. It's just this, coming into it, stepping forward into our human lives. So after we've done a bit of that, stretching the body, getting comfortable, stretching those muscles and tendons and joints and all these different things, we can close our eyes if we like to, but we don't have to. And then bring our attention to this body, and particularly the breath coming in through the nose, through the nostrils. Breathing as if your life depends on it. And as we start, we may want to take a few deep breaths. Really breathing in and out deeply and getting any of that stale air out of there. Getting some fresh air in there. Bringing some freshness into this this being that happens to be here. And once you start to connect and settle into the intimacy, the relevance of breathing in your life, you can let the breathing settle to be more natural. The breath just coming in and going out. And as if your life depended on it, be a caretaker of your breath. Be a wholehearted presence of being with the breath and taking care of the body. With your willingness to be with the breath and be aware of the body. That's our method, so don't forget that. Being with the breath and being aware of the body. No right or wrong way to breathe. Being with the breath, however it happens to be, and offering our awareness to the body. Let's try that for a few minutes, then I'll give some more guidance. So being with the breath, caretaker of the breath, and being aware of the body. Being with the breath and having a body. Getting distracted is a big part of this. Thinking is a big part of this. Judging is a big part of this. So all of that scattered mind, right and wrong, good and bad, justified and unjustified, scattered mind, being with the breath, being a caretaker, being a diligent companion and friend to the breath, being aware of the body. Those pains, those aches, those uncomfortable experiences that may come up in the body, being aware of them without judgment and continuing to be a caretaker of the breath. And for those of us that are totally scattered mind, totally distracted, it's okay. What's the breathing like? How do we breathe in a way when our mind is so distracted, we're so fed up? How do we breathe in a way that we take care of ourselves? That even though the mind is stressful, even though the body is painful, we are being a caretaker of the breath in a way that is healing and gentle. Not letting those physical pains or those mental disturbances prevent us from being this caregiver to ourselves. Consider healing and empowerment through being with the breath and having a body. Allow the sound of the bell to invite us more and more deeply into our practice. And as we practice together, really putting forth a good amount of effort to deepen and enrich our lives together. Inviting the bell. Meditation is the practice of coming back. The mind becomes scattered, confusing even. We notice that, we become aware of that, returning to being a caretaker of breathing and having a body. Through this intimacy with our breath and our body, healing and processing all aspects of our life. Each time that we get distracted and return to the breathing in the body, learning to settle, learning to calm down, even when the storm of our body or our mind is overwhelming, we have that capacity to come back, to calm down, to stabilize, breath by breath. Getting caught up in a complicated dream or vision, or a complicated tension, or a complicated sleepiness, coming back to that balance point of the breath and the body in the present. Bright and aware, calm and stable. When we work to stabilize ourselves, we can also be a stabilizing factor for those around us. It's not difficult to understand the value and the relevance of a meditation practice in our own life. If your meditation becomes too intense, rather than giving up entirely, you may prefer or find value in trying to simply shift your position. So if you are sitting and becoming overwhelmed with either the mind or sleepiness, slowly and gently moving into a standing position. Or if you are sitting and find yourself overwhelmed by tension and pain, slowly and gently moving into a laying position. We don't need to entirely give up when difficulty rears its head. We can shift, change. Be a caretaker for ourselves. Each and every breath coming home. This meditation practice of turning our light, turning our engagement, our stepping, our effort, turning inward towards the present, breathing in, breathing out. This is at the heart, the core. It's not complicated, it's not foreign, it's not something that you need to strain to understand. It's simply that willingness to practice turning. All the time, we're relying on a thinking mind. All the time, relying on past and future. Ideas about ourselves, ideas about others. Once a day, once a week, once a month, turning the light inward, turning it around, being with the breath, relying on the moment-to-moment experience of breathing. Rely on it. If everything else was not for sure, where you came from, where you're going, your money, relying on the breath and finding that there is peace and calm underneath the storm of our lives. Underneath the storm of a scattered, complicated, convoluted, thinking mind, scattered mind, underneath, just below the surface, is a calm mind. When we practice meditation, the capacity for appreciating the calm, it grows. Even though much of our lives is spent chasing excitement, being a meditator, being a yogi, being a spiritual practitioner, to recognize that calm, space, the breath is also worthwhile. The breath and the body are also worthy of your attention and your consideration. This method of being with the breath and being aware of the body, always accessible. It's just a matter of our willingness to rely on it. Putting down our thinking mind, and breath by breath, stepping into peace. So if our eyes are closed, we can now open them. In meditation, it's very good to have a beginning, a practice, and then the ending. So if you want to have your own meditation practice, independent practice regularly, it doesn't need to be big and complicated or, very long and extended. Simply mindfully and gently setting a space for yourself, making that determination that you want to practice, and then sitting or laying down, getting into that position slowly and gently. And then just for 5 minutes, just for a minute, however long it might be for you, turning the light inward, being with the breath, wholeheartedly being willing to be with the breath and be aware of the body. And when you're finished, after 5 minutes or so, slowly getting out of that meditation practice, slowly moving into the rest of your life. And we want to move slowly into it and slowly out of it so that we can incorporate that meditation mind, that calm mind, that wholehearted present moment embodiment into all of our life, not just when we're sitting down. But when we have the privilege, when we have the conditions, when we have the ability to just sit or lay down and be with the breath, be with the body, this is something to really take advantage of. And that can help us bring it into the rest of our lives as well. So now, let's open up the space for any questions. And if you can, also, you can like the video. And if you're not subscribed, welcome to subscribe and also join our Discord channel, our community space, if you like to. In the future, we'll have more events, group meditations, and also community gatherings where we, maybe it'll be a Zoom meeting or maybe through our Discord, where we can have this intimacy, more like being in the same room together and discussing these topics, looking at different teachings and things like that. So let's take some questions. If you have, or even if you want to share about your meditation experience. A lot of times, if we have an experience that resonates with us and that's meaningful for us, sharing that can empower others. It can inspire others. So oftentimes at the end of a group meditation practice, we can open up the space for either sharing experience or questions. And you can share that in the live chat. Ali did have this question about meditating with tinnitus. I, of course, don't have tinnitus, but when we have, well, of course, I don't have tinnitus. I don't know about of course, but when we have pain in our meditation practice, we don't want to sit ourselves. We don't want to put ourselves in a position of being in pain. But when we are in a situation where there is pain, rather than judging it or getting into an argument or a fight with that pain, we can try just being aware of it. Listening to that pain, showing up to that pain, giving it our attention. And it may become too intense, and then, perhaps we need to change our position or however we take care of tinnitus. It's not to put ourselves in pain, but when we are meditating and pain is coming up, we can listen to it. We can be with it and not try to take a step back from the pain of it. Take a step back and just being aware of the experience. Olivier sharing that our life does depend on breathing, and that's right. So oftentimes people are thinking about meditation, and it's very much, the mind in the sky. Oh, it's this special experience. I need to do this. I need to do that, or I need to figure out this idea or that aspect of myself. I need to overcome this or fix this aspect. And a lot of those problems, a lot of those stressors are going to be made more workable when we have this intimacy and this relationship with our body and our breath. Because all of those emotions, all of those judgments, those different ideas, whatever they might be, they are originating from this present moment, body, and breathing. And so even though meditation can seem almost dull, almost unimportant, because it's just the body and breathing, that's actually a miscommunication. That's a lack of insight on our part, because the body and the breath is maybe the most fundamental aspect of our experience. So having intimacy and having a relationship with that is naturally going to make those bigger ideas and those bigger story problems in our lives more workable. And I'm sure many of us have experienced, when we have a scattered mind, everything is difficult. Everything is a nightmare. We can't do anything when we have this scattered mind. Let alone when problems come to us, then, geez, when it's a scattered mind. But when we're able to calm down, when we're able to have this directness of experience, this stability of having a body and breathing, being a human being at this moment, all of the situations that we're going through in our lives, they become more workable. When we have a solid ground on which to work from and to approach reality from, naturally, we're going to have better results. And meditation is a process, just like a relationship is a process. You don't walk up to someone and say, hey, let's be best friends. Can I borrow your car? Or can I borrow some money? It's a process. It's a relationship that we're developing with ourselves. So if you go into it, just like if you go into a relationship with, I want that from that person, that's ridiculous. On so many levels. So the same with meditation. It's a process. It's something that we happen to be willing to get involved with, that intimacy and that immediacy with our own lives, with our own body. And it's certainly very spiritual. But it's not spiritual in this story-based way. It's spiritual in a way that totally transcends that. Any stories, any ideas that we can have about it. Good morning to Nikki Jackson. Ziamachia sharing, thank you, Bante. I'm not entirely sure how it's possible, but that was both unburdening, emptying, and enriching, encompassing at the same time. Well, that sounds lovely, Ziamachia. Luke, thank you, and thank you, Luke, for joining. Takriel, thank you for your time here. Mr. Higglesworth asking or sharing, my body doesn't like to relax. What to do? Well, if you know that your body doesn't like to relax, that's all the more reason to get involved in relaxation. Letting go is something that happens naturally. Just in the same way that when I ring this bell, letting go happens naturally. Relaxing happens naturally. When we know that we're in a situation where my body doesn't like to relax, I can't meditate, I can't do this, when we know that that's the quality of our mind, that's all the more reason you want to get out ahead of this. So one of the ways that we can do that is that we can apply ourselves, we can engage in activities that are skillful. We can engage in activities of generosity or patience with others, or sharing our time with other people, trying to be of service, doing helpful things for ourselves. It could be cleaning our own room, cleaning our bathroom. And then as we do those good activities, those wholesome activities over time, our mind can naturally become more relaxed. And so when we know that we have a problem, we have a pretty serious problem, when we know that's the case, And it's very rare that we're able to relax, or it's very rare that we're in a state of mind where we can practice meditation. If we know that, all the more reason to get out ahead of it. So when conditions do come up that are suitable, where you can practice, where you can do some mindful breathing, you want to take advantage of that. You don't want to waste that moment, because it may not come again. And if you're very informed, if you know quite directly that you have a problem, as we all do to varying degrees, but if you know you have a serious problem, all the more reason to, when the conditions arise, to take advantage of that mindful breathing. And to settle and to calm, rather than constantly stacking and adding and all this constantly. You have those you know you have a pretty big problem mentally, whatever it is. Your mind's just a scattered mess. You know that very well. And then the moment comes, or the conditions come, where you can, you can do some mindful breathing. You notice, oh, I can be with my breath. But it tends to be that instead of the conditions come together and we take a breath, we come into the present, it tends to be people who have that kind of problem, myself, anyone, you feel that mindful breath and then jabba, jabba, jabba. Your scattered mind again, you're stacking ideas, this kind of thing, on top of each other again, and you're just making more and more problems for yourselves. So if you know you have quite a bit of difficulty, get out ahead of that. And when the conditions come up where you can practice, take advantage of it, put your heart into it, and it's going to be difficult, but it's certainly worthwhile. Okay, Olivier sharing, I found that when I have tension or tightness in my body, approaching it with care often allows me to settle in more deeply. I agree. Yeah. That care, that ability, just in the same way that certain people, certain caretakers, certain people have a capacity to deal with people, to show up for people that are going through a lot of suffering. Even though that person is really going through hell, they're really going through a very difficult, painful time, there are certain people who can approach them compassionately and care for them. We're learning as we practice meditation to approach our own pain in that same way. And when we approach it in that way, we can transform our relationship to that pain. And from that activity of intimacy with that pain, we can transform it into understanding and compassion. Okay, Kyle sharing, it was important for me to hear that I could shift or change during my practice. I think I've been fighting with myself, trying to soldier on, get over something instead of taking care. Yeah, that's a good insight. The soldiering on, or the more intensive practice, this is something that comes from stabilizing and learning to really take care, to really be intimate with our sufferings and our pain. If we just start with this idea of soldiering through, I'm going to fight my way to enlightenment, we're sure to get ourselves into all kinds of unnecessary suffering, drama, trauma, etc. And I also have to change my position a bit here so that I'm not soldiering. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to stand up. Okay, so someone asked, I believe Nikki Jackson asked, how did disconnecting recently help you? Nikki, I'm guessing you're referring to the retreat that I took where I was, offline. And I would say that it helped me by it kind of brought me to a more direct relationship with myself. And doing that is just very informative. It's grounding. So I noticed of course, I noticed the tendency and the feeling to, look at YouTube or something like that, or to look, check the phone for people contacting me and all that, and talking with people, whether they're students or friends or just someone who needs support, and to just be with my own mind. So grounding, I would say, grounding and informative. I don't know that it necessarily helped me. I don't know that I'm better now before taking the retreat, but it certainly is empowering to know that there is a life where you're not connected, where you're not watching YouTube, where you're not communicating with others. There is a life, there's an experience that is just you. And attending to that, showing up to that, is really what we're doing in our meditation practice. We're showing up for ourselves. And as we develop that relationship with ourselves, we empower ourselves to be independent, to learn where our faults are, where our strengths are, and we experiment. So over time, as you practice meditation, you're learning, what works. You make mistakes, but you make those mistakes within a container of intimacy and groundedness. So you understand those mistakes on a more integral level, and you're less likely to repeat those. That's what I will say about my recent retreat. Luke asking, any advice for times when meditation feels like a chore? Well, you could certainly change it up. So meditation is not just sitting and focusing on your breathing. Meditation can be taking that mind of intimacy, that mind of exploration and curiosity, and it can be taking that mind and going for a walk. And you can do that intentionally, right? If you have this amount of intention and effort where you can make this determination, that's an amazing sign where you say to yourself, okay, I want to meditate now, but it feels like a chore. It feels like I don't want to do that. Take that meditation approach that you have in your normal sitting meditation and take that into a walk, or into doing something that you need to do. Maybe you need to clean something, or maybe there's someone you can help. And so you can take your meditation practice into that. That's what I recommend. And you may find that a few minutes into your walk, you're ready to sit down and practice a formal meditation. And then maybe you get up and you continue your walk in a meditative way. But the main focus here is that we're making meditation a part of our lives. The normal way is that we're always relying on thinking. We're always relying on ideas about ourselves, ideas about other people, stories, past and future. We're constantly relying on that. In meditation, we're bringing up this mind in this practice of relying on being aware, relying on breathing. So a good example of this maybe is the awkwardness that you find. Awkward when you go to meet someone for the first time, or you go to the grocery store, or whatever. There's this sense of awkwardness. It's very, very common, no matter who you are, unless you're very advanced. But when we shift our reliance, when we exercise this practice of relying on the breath and relying on having a body, we can find that that awkwardness of the context of our ideas about the situation, it's totally secondhand to we're just breathing and have a body, and that's okay. Whatever the story is, whatever the perception of others or ourselves are, breathing and having a body is okay. So this opens up a lot of doors. And the meditation practice is making that a part of our mind, our habit, our life. That we're not just constantly relying on thinking and stories. We also have this present moment embodied reality that we kind of know about. We're kind of tuned into. And we don't need to always fall back onto thinking and chasing after something or running away from something. We also have this kind of life that's unfolding that we have a intimate relationship with. So I hope that's helpful, Luke. Air to Roma, hi there. My retreat went well. It was informative. And I'm glad that you're here. Of course, I can't see you, but you can see me. So, Carmine Petreka asking, when I sit cross-legged, my feet and calf go numb, and I have to stop that posture. How do I improve my sitting? So there's certain stretches that you can do. You can do a hanging stretch. You can be sitting with your legs and your feet all the way out, stretching your groin area. But for Western people, Carmine, I'm not sure if you're a Western person, but it's very, very natural because we've grown up sitting in chairs. That when we sit on the floor cross-legged in a meditation position, it's very normal that our legs are going to fall asleep or these kinds of things. So practice walking meditation. Bring that meditation mind, bring that meditation approach to slow walking, to standing, to laying down. Don't limit yourself to one particular position. And this is a strong practice. There's difficulty in this, but it's very worthwhile if you're able to do it. Practice some slow walking meditation. Practice some standing meditation. And also you can sit in a chair. It's not an issue at all. Hey there, Patrick. Feels good to have you here. To be seeing your comment live and in the present. Mr. Higglesworth, you're welcome. Air to Roma, what the eyes can see is not true vision. That which is unseen is as bright as the sun itself. So it's our heart that is most important, not our eyes. We can survive very well without our eyes, but without our heart, don't even think about it. So, any more questions, anyone? This has been a well-attended group session here. We still have 20 people watching. So if there are any questions about meditation or anything, now is the time to ask or, of course, to share your experience if you like. here's what we will do. I'll give everyone, if you have some questions, you can still write them, but in the meantime, we'll reread that first text that we read before we practiced. This should be the one, yeah. So, the basic attitude for settling the mind. From the meditator's perspective, settling the mind is the method and process by which we cure and heal the afflicted mind. Actually, the reason for people's mental instability already exists at the time of birth. If you don't recognize your problems by the time you have grown up, you really have some problems. So recognizing our suffering, there's nothing wrong with that. If we don't recognize that we have some problems, if we don't recognize that we are suffering, that's then you have some real problems. Nobody in the world is completely free from mental problems. And since you came here to participate in this event, this signifies that you and others could use help in some areas. So from that perspective, you are already a normal and healthy person. When we seek help, when we recognize that there is suffering or there is stress in our lives, and then we start to take steps to deal with that, from that perspective, from that understanding, we can see that we are already a normal and healthy person. When you discover you have problems and illness and do not conceal them from yourself, this is a healthy attitude. How does meditation teach people to calm their minds in everyday life? The meditator's attitude is to recognize the problem, face it, deal with it, and then let it go. No matter what one encounters, do not see it as devastating. If one knows in advance what possible misfortune may occur, it is best to not let it happen, so be careful. But if a misfortune must happen, what is the use in worrying? Worries and anxieties not only are of no help, but will also probably make situations even worse. So the best solution is to face it, to turn towards that suffering, that difficulty, whatever it may be, that moment-to-moment suffering, scattered mind. The best solution is to turn towards it, to face it. Very often, patients with cancer come to see me because the doctors have already told them that their life is about to come to an end. And in Taiwan, in kind of Buddhist countries or traditional Buddhist communities, the monks, the Buddhist monks, they're like a teacher and a guide, like a life coach and a therapist and a preacher, all rolled up into one, and also a monk. So people would come to Master Sheng Yen, and they come asking for help and to say goodbye as well. And the Master would tell them not to fear death, but not to wait for death either. If treatment is required, then accept treatment. If something can be done, then do it. And eat what you can eat. Live a normal life, but do not force yourself. Do not feel complete despair towards life. This is the meditator's attitude. Living is very important, and life is very precious. Do not be frightened by others, and do not frighten yourself. Very often the situation may not be so bad, but people become scared, worried to death, because they cannot accept, cannot face what has happened, and they feel worried and anxious. Therefore, the approach of meditation to calming the mind is to do whatever should be done. One time, the master monk saw a monk in the monastery and asked him, "Have you been living here for a long time?" The monk said, "No, I am new here." So the master monk told him, "Go have some tea." He saw another monk later and asked him, "How about you? Have you been here a long time?" The other monk replied, "Yes, I have." The master monk said, "Go have some tea." The head monk of the temple witnessed this and was puzzled. So he asked this master monk, "Why did the master invite the newcomer to tea and also the old-timer?" The master said to him, "You go and have some tea too." This is a very famous Zen story. What exactly happened in this story? Many people guess it's about its meaning, but it is actually quite simple. Because it was time for tea, the master invited everyone to go have some tea. In other words, life is living and doing whatever should be done. It is very important to experience and enjoy life and live earnestly. I'm not sure what earnestly is, so I'm going to look that up. With sincere and intense conviction. So to live sincerely, to live wholeheartedly, to really take that step, to really drink that tea, to really wake up, to really take that shower, to really finish, to really speak, to really breathe. That's how life is meant to be lived. Well, with all these people here, we might as well read a little bit more here. Okay, so many people, they want to know about enlightenment. They want to have a special experience. Many people, they get into meditation because they want to become witches and wizards. You know, they see Harry Potter and then, oh, I want to learn about meditation. And now I'm doing chakras and special breathing and special candles and special crystals, and I want to be psychic. I want to have a astral projection. I want to have lucid dreams. You know, this is a very common Western approach, right, with spirituality. But in Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism in particular, which originated in China, is called Chan, this is a different view of enlightenment. So the levels of settling the mind in Zen. And a bit of a preface here. In Zen Buddhism, there's two ideas of enlightenment, two kind of schools of thought or ways to go about it. One is gradual enlightenment. So you are progressing on the spiritual path, the path of cultivation. And another is a sudden enlightenment. So you have a moment where you wake up, where you come into lucidity. So from the view of gradual enlightenment, step-by-step development and progress, there are levels in the process of settling the mind. So this is talking about the process, the practice of spirituality, of meditation, the developmental process. First, we rein in a mind that is filled with complicated thoughts directed to various objects on the outside. So the normal framework of mind, the regular way that we are going about things as a Western people or human beings, the regular way is a mind that is filled with complicated thoughts directed to various objects on the outside and all these stories that go along with that, right? That's what we're all very, we know exactly what that's talking about. So first, the first step on the path of meditation, the first step in the spiritual path, we are reining in that mind. We're reining it in slowly. We're bringing it in, bringing it home. It's not that we're having an empty mind. So if you get into meditation and you think, oh, I should have an empty mind, that's not the process. The first step is that we are reining in. We're beginning to work with that mind that is full of complicated thoughts based on objects in the outside world. It is like two people having a dispute, and they need a third party to separate them. So we can take our meditation as we're taking that position of a third party when there's two people having a dispute. No? So naturally, it's kind of difficult. And naturally, you're going to be aware of the two people. This and that, good and bad. I want this, I don't want that. But when we begin to practice meditation, we're taking that position, that stance, that application of the third party that is there, not to just give up and walk away, but to intervene and to settle that situation. That situation of complicated thoughts directed to various objects on the outside. There is a lay follower living in our monastery who often vents their temper. A lay follower in traditional Buddhism, you have the Buddhist monks, male, female Buddhist monks, and then you have the lay people, which are kind of like Buddhist people, and maybe sometimes they live at the temples with the monks. So there is a lay follower living in our monastery who often vents their temper. One of the monks, whenever they see this other fellow venting, immediately turns his attention to his breathing and focuses his mind to contemplate why this annoys him. This is an example of retrieving the mind from outside objects. So we're in that real world situation. Someone makes us angry, someone disturbs us, we get caught up in something. Whenever that monk sees that situation happening, getting caught up in something from the outside, immediately turning that attention to his breathing and focusing the mind to contemplate, why does this annoy me? Not getting caught up in the complicated thinking of the story or the situation. So this is an example of retrieving the mind from outside objects. So in our meditation, instead of this idea of, oh, I sit down and have an empty mind, or I sit down and I'm aligning my chakras, and so I need to be at peace. Instead of that, we get distracted. We start thinking about, oh, that person annoyed me so much. What's wrong with them? That person, that person. That happens in our meditation, and then we bring it back. We retrieve it. We go back to our breath, and we can even question, well, why does that upset me so much? And also, I don't mean to say that, chakras or astral projection or these different spiritual ideas, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. It's just that there are other approaches to meditation that are a bit more robust and have a little bit more background to them, a little bit more historical validity, or a lot of great, stable, direct teachers. You wouldn't, for chakras and astral projection, etc., you wouldn't necessarily have a person like that teaching at a university or going to a school to teach that to children, right? That would be strange. But for someone like Sheng Yen, Master Sheng Yen, Shifu, or someone like Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama, etc., oh my gosh, I mean, you'd be You'd expect to pay $1 million to have them come and instruct at a school. It'd be a gift to the whole society. So I just mean to bring that's not the only practice of spirituality. There's also a very grounded, direct, not complicated thinking practice of meditation and spirituality that's very viable. So when you do not want to quarrel with someone, yet the other party insists on quarreling and it seems unavoidable, with no place to hide, you can try this method. So I'm sure many of us have gone through this. Be aware of your breathing and be aware of the thoughts in your mind. So if you're sitting in meditation and you just can't get it under control, be aware of your breathing and be aware of the thoughts in your mind. Of course, if you like arguing or find it enjoyable, that is another story. Today I read a news story about a couple in their 80s who argue every day. They got married in their 20s and have argued for 60 years now. They view arguing as a healthy way of communication. If we cannot be like them and view quarreling from another perspective, if we cannot be like them and view arguing from another perspective, then we'd better use the method of retrieving the mind from the objects outside. So if you love having a scattered mind, if you love having complicated thinking and getting invested and involved in complicated thinking and focusing on objects, in the outside world and all this, then that's another story. That's a different situation. But for those people who find that problematic, and if we are not like that, then we'd better use the method of retrieving the mind from the objects outside. After retrieving the mind from external objects, let it settle on the practice method. This is concentrating the mind. There are many methods to concentrate the mind. For example, counting our breaths, investigating a huato. So a huato is like a question, questioning. What is this? What's happening? How deeply can we ask that question? So that's a certain kind of meditation method. Or just sitting in meditation. So we have to have that practice method so we retrieve the mind, right? Even when we're a beginner meditator and the mind is very scattered, it's very jumbled up, it's very difficult to meditate, right? Even when the mind is like that, we become distracted, we notice that jumbled up mind, we become aware that we're so caught up in that. So what do we do then? We need to have a method. So awareness of our breathing, mindfulness of breathing, counting our breath, or just sitting in meditation, whatever it is. So we get distracted and then we come back to that method. Everyone breathes at all times and in all places. Therefore, counting the breaths is a most useful method. That's how I got started with formal meditation training, is with breath counting. After learning to calm the mind through practice, one must not be attached to this settled mind. If that happens, one may become very passive, wishing to meditate at all times, not wanting to be in contact with anyone. When one is unattached to the settled mind and can let it go, then one can have true mental health. So even after we touch into that settled mind, that calm mind, that peaceful mind, even when we touch into that and deeply connect with that, also willing to let that go, to move in and out of these dynamic situations in our lives without attachment to things being a certain way. So when one is unattached even to the settled and calm mind, and can let it go, then one can have true mental health. The process from gathering the mind to focusing and then letting go of the mind is also the process of moving from a scattered mind to the levels of concentrated mind, unified mind, and no mind. This can be illustrated with the analogy of riding a horse. In the first stage of riding a horse, we are aware of the horse, and we know it is not easy to ride the horse because it is untrained and wild. So when we first begin the meditation practice, find a untamed, untrained horse. So in the first stage of our meditation practice of riding that horse, we are aware of the horse, and we know that it is not easy to ride the horse because it is untrained and wild. The horse we refer to here is our mind, full of wandering and scattered thoughts. These scattered thoughts do not stop for a second. They are uncontrollable like a wild horse. So that's the first step. That's the first practice, the first stage in our meditation. In the second stage of riding a horse, we are aware of the horse, and the horse follows our commands. This means our mind is more settled, and we're able to take care of our mind. If someone comes to quarrel with us or criticize us or make us uncomfortable, we are mostly unaffected. This second stage, this scattered, concentrated mind, is a stage where we can begin to really practice. We can really make that choice to sit down for 15 minutes or to join an event like this and really participate. And to have that quality of mind is something to be extremely grateful for, because most people are in that first stage where the mind is so scattered that they are aware of how much of a untrained and untamed that horse is, so they can't even begin to consider to control it or to come back, to redirect the attention to be with the breath, to practice. So to have that concentrated mind is quite good. In the third stage of riding a horse, we no longer feel the existence of the horse. This is like the best rider riding on a horse. With the horse running very fast, the rider forgets about the horse and the horse forgets about the rider, thus unifying rider and horse. At this level, everything and every event in the surroundings is unified with us and inseparable. At this time, we feel very close to everything and people because we are them and they are us. That's the experience. That's not the philosophy or the perspective. That's the experience. As we get into meditation, it's so important to be practical and grounded about what's our experience. What kind of mind do we have at this moment? And not to over-aggrandize ourselves or to be focusing on this faraway perspective or philosophy when that's not our experience. And fourth, the final stage, no mind. Achieving a unified mind, a mind of oneness, isn't the ultimate. The fourth level is to practice no mind. When no mind is achieved, we are unaware of both horse and rider. This is what we mean by attaching neither to settled mind nor to unsettled mind. However, this does not mean we do not do anything or do not care about anything. Life is the place of practice. Having achieved no mind, we will live more normally, peacefully, and with more compassion. There's a saying that I've heard for quite a while that as you're going on the spiritual path, even getting up into unified mind, a mind of oneness, this person might stick out. You might see that person and, whoa, that's like a holy person, or, something like that. They really stick out. But for someone who attains no mind, for someone who goes the full way and experiences this total dissolution of self and other, right? Not even oneness. They just look like a normal person. So having achieved no mind, we will live more normally, peacefully, and with more compassion. Chan Master Huangbo Zuyuan said, "Eating all day without biting into a grain of rice, walking all day without stepping on the ground. At that time, there is no separation of forms such as you and I, and no separation at any time from all things, not deluded by various states. This is one who is free and at ease. This means neither liking nor disliking anything in life, just living naturally. This is freedom and liberation. If we can live with this attitude and adapt to our environment and the people in it, we will have far fewer problems. However, we should still have our own position and not give it up as a result. I am a monk and should not have a wife. For lay Buddhists, it is right to have wives or husbands. Therefore, everyone has his own position, which should be respected. Many problems between people occur because we often see things only from our own perspective and deny the opinions and views of others. This causes many problems and results in an unhealthy mentality in the end." And there's a final Q&A here. There's a final question that was asked in this part from one of the students. So this is the question. If someone pursues spiritual practice for a long time, but their mind is still filled with vexations, attachments, suffering, should they continue their pursuit? This is the answer. Vexations and suffering are originally illusory. When there is no attachment in the mind, vexations and suffering disappear. The situation such as you describe may be due to incorrect concepts or using the method ineffectively. It may also be that in reality, vexations have already lessened without your realizing it, or that you are not content with your progress. To borrow a saying, the darkest hour is just before the dawn. If you're feeling like you're in utter darkness, you may be close to dawn. So don't give up. Don't be afraid of others. Don't be afraid of yourself. Peace is on its way. So we'll just finish with a sadhu. So if anyone wants to chant along with me, you're welcome. And we'll just say sadhu 3 times. And this is a traditional Buddhist kind of saying, which means well done. So we're kind of giving ourselves a pat on the back. We are appreciating the wholesomeness of this practice together, and using our expression to pat ourselves on the back. All right. So if you like, you can join me, but if not, you can just listen, and then we will end our session together. Okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, thank you for joining, everyone. Maybe see you tomorrow morning or see you again soon. But I will be flying to England tomorrow, tomorrow evening, hopefully. So yeah, see you again soon, and take care of yourself.